Halito, and welcome to Native Chalk Talk, a podcast by natives for all. Here we're keeping our Native ancestors' stories and history alive while also sharing with you our Native cultures, traditions, and more. I'm Rachel Youngman, a Choctaw originally from Anadarko, Oklahoma. I hope you'll enjoy this journey with me as we learn from our Native American guests. And stay tuned for the end of each episode where we'll talk about some great ways to support Native causes and or Native-owned businesses. Let's get started.
I am more than a maker.
More than an athlete.
More than a pastor.
Chata ili finachili.
I am Choctaw proud.
We are the Choctaw Nation, and together we're more.
For many of us who research our ancestors, we're often shocked to find out so much more than what had been told to us about their lives, if we knew anything at all. The following is one such story. I quote, "In 1914, a Philadelphia department store tycoon and well-known philanthropist selected 3 Indian boys from boarding schools across the United States to attend a prestigious Pennsylvania prep school. Little did these boys know that they were part of an experiment, for lack of a better word, that they'd be tested to see if they were as capable as a non-native person. Did these boys even know they were part of an experiment? I'm sitting here today in Purcell, Oklahoma with Choctaw author Carolee Maxwell, who shares with us the story of her grandpa, her papa, who was one of those said boys. But not only that, my own ancestral story intertwines with Carolee's in a random happenstance that I'll share about later. Carolee, welcome to Native Chalk Talk.
Thank you very much. It is so good that I have this opportunity to bring his story forth again, because it's since 2007 it has been a wonderful opportunity for my husband and I, who helped was co-author. We were co-authors on the book, and to bring his story forth to people. So thank you very much for this.
Absolutely. So your book, Touched by Greatness, From Indian Territory to the Ivy League, is based on the true story of Charles Watson McGilberry. And you wrote the story along with your husband, correct?
Yes.
So I'd like to take a moment to honor your husband, Wayne. You and I had started working on the idea of an episode together quite a while back. And between that time and now, your husband passed away. And I really love the love story that was Wayne and Carolee Maxwell.
Yes.
The way you've always spoken about him is really an inspiration of a long and happy marriage. So Wayne also wrote a book called Slim Pickens, which is the story of a rural Oklahoma school and the humbling beginnings of an 8-man football. I love that you're both educators and authors. So let's talk about the other important man in your life, your papa, as you call him, a Choctaw man named Charles Watson McGilberry. So on the front cover of the book is a yellow bird. Why so?
Well, I was of yellow hair, but on my Chickasaw side, I'm from the bird clan, and he would just call me his little yellow bird, but he gave me my Indian name, Pt1, which means strong like a bodark tree. And of course, bodark trees are yellow.
Yeah.
So it was very, he was always very loving in calling me both names, Yellowbird and Pt1.
Well, and that strength really has carried you through a lot lately.
Oh, it has. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, it has.
For sure. So what was your papa like?
Since he was my mentor until I was 17 when he passed away, he was such an influence in my life, because he taught me how to he taught me everything. My brother and I would spend summers with my grandparents, and I learned everything from him: how to study, how to drive a car. He taught me everything, and mainly taught me how to be strong. He was a godly man, and but he was also very intelligent, and but he was so humbling with all that he was, that it was just, he was a storyteller. Everything was, he was my life. Mm-hmm. So he was a strong man, very strong, to come through what he had in life.
Yeah. He sounds precious.
He was.
I mentioned earlier that sometimes we learn things about our ancestors that we never knew, and this is certainly the case with your papa. What did you find out about him?
This is very strange. My daughter and son-in-law, and I will tell you this, even the stories before that later, but in 2006, I think, is when my daughter and son-in-law traveled to D.C. They had always heard me tell of, my grandfather did speak of his being educated in the Ivy League in the East. And he would talk about that, only that part of it, that he had been educated at the Mercersburg Academy in the East. So my daughter had heard of Mercersburg. And when they were traveling to D.C., they came across the sign that said Mercersburg to Mercersburg. So they went up there to discover that the academy was still in existence, this preparatory academy. And she called me on campus and said, "Mom, Mercersburg is still, the academy is still in existence, and they still have a lot of students there, and I'm on the campus." And so this generated the desire for me to call the headmaster at the academy. And I was able to tell him that my papa attended there in 1914. And if for any reason that they would still maintain their records for that time. And he said, "I don't know, let me get with the historian and the archivist."
Oh, what were you thinking at that time? Were you just,
I know,
probably on the edge of your seat, like, call me back, hurry?
Yes. Well, he did in 2 days' time.
Oh my gosh.
In 2 days' time, he called me back and he said, "Carolee, are you planning on coming here?" And I said, "I would love to."
You're like, let me hop on the plane tomorrow.
Yes. And he said, "Well, we have discovered something that the academy, it's history making." And yes, indeed, we did find your grandfather's files.
What did you start bawling?
And
what did you do?
Oh, wow. And he said, "But here's the thing, we would like to meet you, because there, actually, you would want to know all of this yourself, and to be handed
in person."
That. Yes.
Yeah.
And I said, "Well, as soon as we can." Well, within a month, we were there. My husband and I were there. So
I don't know if I could wait a month.
We had jobs, and we had to,
that
school.
whole thing.
Yes,
the jobs thing.
Yes.
Yeah.
So,
and he was such a big part of your world. How did he never talk about this to you?
Well, I'll go back to the. This is. He was an experiment, and it's in his folder, and we never knew. He never knew it. The family never knew it.
Right.
He and two other Indian boys were selected from boarding schools all over the United States. And there was a philanthropist from New York that had a heart for the Indian, but he had graduated from Mercersburg Academy himself. And he had attended, I think, Princeton as well, this philanthropist.
Yeah.
And he wanted to see if the Indian could be educated in the Ivy League. And so he picked 3 Indian boys, but he never told them that they were going to be an experiment to see if they could be educated in the Ivy League.
Interesting. And probably no one really knew up until you started doing your research, right?
No, the Academy didn't realize.
The Academy didn't even know.
No,
Wow.
and because his folder hadn't been opened since 1917.
Wow.
And the irony in all of this is that there were a lot of student folders that had been burned up in a fire in a building.
The fires get all of our ancestral records, I swear.
Yes, but his hadn't been, and they found his.
I feel like this was divine intervention.
It was.
Oh,
And
it's meant to be.
that's what Wayne and I really felt. So, but here's the thing, he never knew that he was an experiment. He just thought it was a scholarship to attend. And it was a 3-year preparatory school to Harvard, Yale, and Princeton. And it was all elitist, president's children, and then the very elitists that attended this academy.
Very far cry from the
where
boy
my
from
southeastern
Oklahoma.
that was in Chickasaw Indian boarding school when he was accepted.
Mercersburg Academy looks so grand and gothic, like those typical elite northeastern schools. I'm so glad you got to see it in person. So you went to the school, and what did it feel like to know that your papa walked those same exact grounds?
Oh the first experience was overwhelming. I could feel him.
You feel his presence there.
And that his story has been revealed.
Wow.
His story has come to life. But what was so awesome in all of it, the headmaster had his folder and all ready for me and all, and he told us when we went in, he said, now, I want you to know what we have discovered is this academy will be forever grateful to your grandfather.
Oh, so much there. Oh my goodness.
So, but he said, I want you to be able to look at his folder and all that's in his folder, and then you will see. And he took us downstairs from the administration building into a little glassed area, and there before me was a 1914 to 1917 file of my papa's. And when my husband and I sat down, we literally just grabbed hands and
the tissues.
well, this is another thing. The headmaster brought in a box of tissue and said, "You're going to need this."
That gives me goosebumps,
Yes,
y'all.
it is.
Your book says, as we gingerly opened the file, Wayne and I discovered the contents that unfolded part of an American history that had been hidden from our ancestors, our government, our tribes, and even my precious papa. I can't even imagine that moment. And I'm glad you got to see the records, but you weren't allowed to make copies. Why is that?
Because that protects, during that time, what the headmaster, his children and all, that there wouldn't be any lawsuits against the family, that have been passed on and all, because the headmaster was very strong about him being a failure to the Indian race because he didn't go on to Princeton. And so that was in the file.
That's interesting.
Yes.
A lot of famous folks had gone to Mercersburg, such as Calvin Coolidge Jr., son of the president, 28 Olympians, 9 gold medalists, 7 Rhodes Scholars, political figures, renowned scientists and doctors, war heroes, billionaire businessmen, and famous actors, and your papa. So let's delve in and learn about your papa, Charles, born to Abel and Kitty McGilberry. When was he born and where did he grow up?
He was Sandboys Town is where he grew up, and he was born in 1893, in April of 1893.
Okay, yeah. And actually, Kitty, his mother, was a McCurtain, right?
Yes, she was the daughter to Chief Edmund McCurtain.
Okay.
And
famous name
yes,
amongst the
yes,
Choctaws.
Choctaws, yes, yes.
Oh, they're back, the crows! Do you need to go get them real quick?
Yes.
If you want to, you can. Go ahead.
Are you sure?
Yes, you're fine. So we're taking a break because Carolee saw crows outside and she didn't want them bothering her beautiful other birds that come around like the doves. So she's out there taking care of the crows. So what happened to Kitty when Abel was just 2 years old?
She had passed away of some unknown disease, and I don't know what it was, but he was left with his father.
And that's got to be hard. I mean, so tell us what happened to the kids, because how many kids did they have at that point?
Well, he had brothers and sisters. Cooper, from the Cooper family.
Okay,
and, they were close. They were close and remained close through all the years.
Big news, y'all. One of my favorite Choctaw authors, Sarah Elizabeth Sawyer, has a new writing course called Fiction Writing American Indians. This course is going to show you how to discover the insight you need to write quality, authentic stories, learn practical approaches to researching Native cultures, and get answers to hard questions. I'll be taking the same course, so I invite you to take it with me. Just go to americanindians.fictioncourses.com. But don't forget to use the code CHOCTALK, CHOCTALK, when you're checking out so you can get $30 off. Yep, you're welcome. Learning stuff and saving money. Let's do this.
Now, here's where the ironic part comes into my meeting Carolee. My great-great-great-grandfather, Joe Coley, and his daughter, Rosa, which is my great-great-grandmother, they were the reason that Carolee's great-grandfather, Abel, who is Charles's dad, went to prison. So what? Plot twist. So Rosa, again, my great-great-grandmother, she was the first of many kids born to Joe and Sophie Coley, and they also had a farm in Sandboys. And Rosa married a man named J.D. Brake, and he was some sort of deputy U.S. Marshal type of thing, and he would get drunk and beat his wife, Rosa. So it was a bad situation. So her father, Joe, and her brother, Edmund, who was the school teacher in the community, forced her to move back home. So one night at a church camp meeting with the Choctaws, someone came running up and was saying that the Coley house was on fire. Assuming it was Rosa's ex-husband, J.B. Drake, they went to his house. JB was drunk and asleep on the porch, and Joe and his son Edmund shot and killed him. So the story's a little fuzzy from here because the account in the book is a little bit different than what the newspapers say. Newspapers don't always get it right, of course, but I'm going to go ahead and read from the book about what happened next. So this is page 52 in the book. The Sandboys Mountains, Winding Star Mountain, and the Comanche Mountains are all part of the Wichita Mountain Range in eastern Oklahoma. All became virtual havens for the outlaws to take refuge when the law was hot and heavy on their trail. The U.S. Marshals out of Fort Smith were the closest law and several days' ride by horseback from Indian Territory. The civilized tribes had their own tribunals and punished those crimes committed by their own kind. Many times the law was vigilante groups or individuals who sought revenge by whatever method was at hand. Such was the case of a lynch mob and an unfortunate soul that ended up at the end of a rope on Abel McGilberry's Sandboys land. What actual crime the victim committed to deserve a hanging is unknown, but we do know that he was a white man. So again, this is J.B. Drake. Abel and two relatives, Isaac King and Norris Cooper, were gathering corn from Abel's fields and piling it in his corn crib, when an acquaintance, Joe Coley, came walking briskly, almost running across the field. He began telling them in his Choctaw language how he and two other fellows had just caught up with a thief and had hung the man down in the woods next to the river. The other man who had been with him had fled, and he asked Abel and the others to come help him get the dead man down from the tree. Abel and his cousins went to help and continued to accompany Joe Coley to the trading post with the hanged man slung over one of Abel's mules. The men thought they were doing the right thing, but somehow the sight of Indians carting a dead man, Indian or white, into the only civilization for miles around frightened people, and the U.S. Marshals were eventually notified. So very interesting that we have this connection, my grandparents and her grandparents.
This is awesome. All these years.
By the way, Carolee just found this out today, so it's kind of fun to get to talk about this.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, how history opens up like this.
It's
I
powerful.
know. It is. It is, because we've always known that, never known. And my great-great-grandfather serving in prison, we just knew that he was innocent.
He was innocent. He was an innocent bystander. And, you know...
And this is awesome. I just think, see
I
what
just love it.
Writing books will bring forth.
Oh, yeah. And I was so glad that you wrote this book, because I got to see another side of the story and get to understand the McGilberries so much better after that. So,
yes.
wow.
Oh.
we're both having light bulb moments over here.
Yes, indeed.
So see, people, put yourself out there, write those stories, tell those stories. You never know what connections you're going to make. And I feel so bad for your family that he went through that.
Yes. And of course, I have always felt, just like my papa always told me, that all things, it is what God, the things that come about that opens up doors of knowledge, more knowledge, it's of God. And I just feel like even still how God's opening up more knowledge of, this is great.
The story is not over. I have a feeling we're going to find more and more information. Yeah, so I feel like we're connected in this really strange and kind of sad way, really.
Yes,
but I'm glad
it is. But yet, it happens in life, and we just have to get stronger from it.
That's true. That's true. And I'm glad that Abel was able to go. You know, we'll tell him a little bit. He does get out of prison at some point, thankfully. And Joe Coley and his son died in prison because I guess the environment there wasn't healthy, and a lot of people died.
That's
in prison,
what Abel told my papa.
Really? Oh my goodness.
You know about the treatment and all there at Leavenworth.
So sad.
Yes, it is.
Oh my goodness. Wow. Well,
this is
moving on. The story will continue to unfold, and we'll keep you guys updated if we find out anything else. Well, the book says that by 1891, all Indian children were required by the federal government to be educated. The Choctaw tribe, as many of the other tribes, however, had already established its own schools. One was Jones Academy. By the way, I've done an episode at Jones Academy, which is in Hartshorn, Oklahoma, with the superintendent, Patrick Moore. So listeners, feel free to go check out that episode as well. So Charlie attends Jones Academy. And at the age of 16, Charlie graduates with honors from Jones Academy and was accepted to Chilocco Indian Agricultural High School. And what happened to his father, Abel, who was in prison?
Well, my grandfather's uncle, Green Chief, well, he wasn't chief at that time, but Green McCurtain was an attorney.
Okay.
And he knew that Abel was innocent. Now, I don't know exactly all of that.
Yeah.
Who did what?
Who did
and,
what?
Yes, and
what
all that.
Strings
but
were pulled.
he helped Abel to be released from prison after 8 years or not.
Thank goodness.
Yes. And when he came back to San Boys, he continued his working on the farm and had remarried. And by that time, my grandfather had become an adult and had continued his life. And it was a time that, well, my grandfather, Papa, went through so much adversity, even with growing up, basically raising himself and then going through boarding schools and all. But he always, and there was so much sadness about boarding schools back then as well. But Papa took advantage of being educated. He loved the thought of being educated, and that he had to do that in order to educate other Indian children.
Yeah.
So
and it sounds like you come from a long line of educators on many sides, which is great.
4 generations on my maternal side.
Yeah.
Both husbands and wives were educators.
That's amazing.
Yes.
Thank you to the educators out there. So on May 4th, 1910, Abel was paroled from Leavenworth Prison thanks to those who helped him be released. So listeners, there's a lot of info in here about Jones Academy and Chilocco that I'm skipping over here for time, but it's definitely worth the read. So go read those details. Very interesting. One of Charlie's train rides to stay at Chilocco, he saw 2 girls that kept staring back at him and his cousin, Sydney. In school, males and females were kept separate, but if they earned merits, they could go to social events such as ball games or chaperone trips to Arkansas City, Kansas, or Arkansas. Arkansas had automobiles, electric trolleys, hotels, restaurants, and country clubs, and a thriving economy with the discovery of oil, and agriculture was at an all-time high. There, Charlie saw the pretty girl he had seen on the train, and they introduced themselves. Her name was Vivian Hughes from Tishomingo. He carried her books home after the library closed at 8 p.m. So cute. And so their love story begins. Tell us about Vivian.
She was a very strong little woman, Chickasaw woman. She helped my great-grandmother, her mother, to raise the siblings. And my grandmother was the oldest of 10. And my great-grandfather was never around too much. He was a white man. And but being raised on Blue River down north of Tishomingo, that was their allotted land, and even the children received their allotments on both sides of the river that the state still has. But she was a very strong little woman and had to be, but she also had the same visions as my papa as educating.
Wow, she always knew she wanted to be an educator too.
Yes.
Wow. Now, I think it's really interesting too, side note, Vivian's mother was left to care for all those kids because he was an inventor of sorts, right? The dad was?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And he was always inventing things, and he would go off, and he would even go to D.C.
Wow.
Even then, to travel there to try to sell his inventions.
Did he ever make it big?
No.
Oh.
No.
All that being away from his family for nothing. That's so sad.
Yes, it is. It is.
He was a visionary.
Yes, he was. And he was a very colorful
Very colorful man.
Yes.
Well, the book says the family never knew when Britt would be coming down the road or how. He might be gone 3 hours, 6 months, or a year at a time.
Yes.
And then suddenly show up riding a mule or driving a fancy buggy and horse, or an automobile. The only thing accepted the only thing accepted of his visits was that Mamie would be expecting a baby before he left.
Yeah.
His absence caused enormous hardship on Mamie. This left her to do all the chores, raising children and farming. I feel so bad for Mamie.
Oh, she was a precious. She was my little angel, Granny, as we would call her, Mamie Cravat Hughes.
Okay.
She was from the Cravat,
Huh.
Chickasaw side, and but she was a precious little angel. She was only 4'8".
Oh, she was little.
She was little, and a fine woman.
Wow. Well, there were tall tales about your great-grandpa, Britt Hughes, the inventor. Some say he was a relative of Howard Hughes, and they had some similarities, right? Like both inventors from Texas. Did he ever confirm or deny those rumors about Howard Hughes?
No.
Okay.
No. So we
Plot
it's
twists
just
again.
all that we had heard. So it wasn't.
That's
No.
interesting. So at Chilocco, there was an essay contest for Indian school students all over the U.S., the subject being why the Indian student should receive as good an education as any other student. Charlie entered and wrote about how having a good education would help him help his people, which would make for a better America. Charlie won second place and a certificate worth $5, which led to other things as well, right?
Yes, and in fact, this was beginning because this was an essay that the philanthropist Rodman Wanamaker had asked if the students, if it's sending to the boarding schools, and this is how that it was discovered who would be a candidate to go to Mercersburg.
So that really like gave him some spotlight
Yes,
that led to
yes,
big things.
But he didn't realize that's what he was writing for.
Oh my gosh.
So,
Wow. So it sounds like all expenses would be paid. Mr. Allen told Charlie his name was being submitted for the application, and it took a while, but a reply came from Mercersburg saying, "Dear Mr. Allen, our selection committee has met and made its recommendation from the numerous outstanding applications we received. If Charles McGilberry remains interested in attending Mercersburg Academy, we are happy to inform you that he is among the 3 Indian boys chosen to do so. His expenses will be completely met by Mr. Rodman Wanamaker during this time here, and we will be providing you with all the details regarding enrollment dates, travel, clothing issues, and all other necessities prior to and upon his arrival." This letter was signed by Dr. William M. Irving, headmaster. Remember that name. So what was Charlie's response to this, and how did Vivian feel about it?
Well, of course, my little grandmother always felt that there would be marriage after they graduated from Chilocco, and they were planning to attend East Central out of Ada
Okay.
College. But since my papa was wanting so bad to be educated, even more so. And he wanted to take the opportunity, and he convinced her that that's what he would love to do, and that they would marry after he attended the preparatory school.
Yeah.
Because he really wasn't aware that there's a possibility of him going on to the Ivy.
Oh, wow. Right.
So anyway, that's how that he convinced her that was more important at this time for him to be educated.
Agreed.
So,
And then how far apart in age were they, Vivian and Charlie?
well, she was born in 1896, so 3 years.
3 years. Okay. Yeah, that can make a difference when
Yes.
you're that young.
And,
so.
and that was one thing he said, you'll have to graduate from Chilocco anyway, and that would be time.
3 years.
Yes.
So graduation took place on May 17th, 1914, on the same football field where Charlie played football and Vivian would watch. Charlie gave a senior oration on the benefits of agriculture education to the American Indian. Did his father get to attend the graduation?
No.
Oh,
No.
was it too far away, or he just couldn't get there for some reason?
No, I don't know why.
Yeah.
I don't know why he didn't, because they would correspond back and forth. But no, he said he never
Yeah.
attended his.
I know some people were just kind of in their communities and they just didn't leave very often.
That's right.
but-
They found more comfort, especially the Indian.
Yeah. Oh, totally.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. So the time came for Charlie to leave everything he knew and travel to Mercersburg, Pennsylvania to start his continued education. And man, oh man, what a culture shock. He wasn't exactly greeted with open arms. But with that, we'll close part 1, and listeners, stay tuned because you definitely don't want to miss part 2 as we continue to cover the book Touched by Greatness by Carolee Maxwell. Thanks for listening to Native Chalk Talk. Be sure to join our community on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and LinkedIn. Simply search for Native Chalk Talk. That's Native, CHOCTALK. And check us out at nativechalktalk.com. Stay tuned for the next episode. You're going to love it. Yakoki. Thank you, my friends.